Now to the controversy that just won't go away. Scientology is once again in the spotlight after the Senate defeated a bid to have alleged abuses within the church referred to a parliamentary inquiry.
Now, the motion was brought by independent Senator Nick Xenophon after reports from former members about incidents of abuse and harassment were made public. Now, despite the setbacks, Senator Xenophon has vowed to continue his fight against what's become the world's most controversial religion.
For some, it's a cult. For others, it's a saviour. But it is most certainly controversial.
God, looking at human beings as assets. It's hard to comprehend how you can do that.
A stream of ex-members have gone public with allegations of abuse and harassment within the Church of Scientology.
It's incredibly hard to live with. I've lost 2 daughters. Both times I've done my utmost to protect the church from any consequences of those deaths.
They sat down with me and prepared me for essentially saying, good, we're going to take you to the Planned Parenthood. They're going to ask you, do you want an abortion? You are to say yes. And I was going to be driven there by a staff member who would be waiting for me outside in the waiting room.
I cannot find the words to express the damage that has been done to me by this organisation and the hardships that members are forced to endure.
Independent Senator Nick Xenophon has been campaigning for some time to bring the organisation to account, to launch a parliamentary inquiry to cross-check Scientologist policies against our law.
But if a Senate inquiry heard evidence about alleged criminal conduct or conduct that may not be criminal under our current criminal laws, but begs the question whether firstly laws are being adequately enforced, whether there ought to be some fundamental law reform, then surely they are matters of the public interest.
Critics call his mission a political witch hunt, a claim the Senator rejects.
The inquiry is not to examine the beliefs of Scientology, only the behaviour of its members.
But despite his efforts, the motion failed in Parliament 33 votes to 6, with the government concluding that current police investigations are sufficient.
Now, should we as a Senate try to set ourselves up as a judge and jury to decide between he said, she said? I don't think so.
As for the church itself, Representative Cyrus Brooks told media Senator Xenophon's allegations, old and new, are utterly without foundation.
I don't think an inquiry into Scientology would end with Scientology, and I think that all religions have to look at the fact that this actually is a potential for all religions and for coming like the Middle Ages of persecution from Europe being brought over to Australia.
Defeated, but certainly not deterred, Senator Xenophon says he will continue to push for an inquiry, insisting the church should have no objection if they have nothing to hide.
And if the Church of Scientology says we don't do these sorts of things, we think it's wrong and outrageous, then surely they will not have a problem in our laws being changed to protect people about the circumstances, about the allegations that have been complained of.
He'll have to wait until Parliament resumes in May before the issue can be readdressed, making this one debate that's far from over.
So for more on this story, we're joined in Adelaide by Senator Nick Xenophon. In the studio is Reverend Dr. David Milliken, who's an expert on new religious movements and cults. And joining us from Canberra today tonight, reporter Brian Seymour, one of our foremost authorities on the group. We did invite the Church of Scientology to be part of the segment, but they've declined and have instead issued us with a statement. Senator, let's start with you. Your motion was defeated and defeated quite soundly. Why won't you give up this fight?
Well, I think the language has changed since last week. Both the Leader of the Government, Chris Evans, in the Senate, and the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Eric Abetz, they both expressed concern about the allegations. They both suggested that there could be other ways forward in dealing with this. So I'm quite encouraged by that language. I can't turn my back on these victims, and I made it very clear this is not about belief, it's about behaviour.
Senator, the Prime Minister was actually asked about this on Sunrise this morning. Now, although he has many concerns about Scientology, he wasn't convinced that Parliament is the best place to deal with it. Take a listen.
I'm just going to be very careful about how you shine a light on the problem, deal with it, but at the same time don't interfere with criminal justice matters, and that's not where politicians should go.
All right, the Prime Minister's thinking on that this morning on Sunrise. Senator, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, I'm encouraged by the Prime Minister's language. Of course, we can't. It's not the job of the Senate to be undertaking a police investigation, but it's interesting that the police, the private view of some police is that the more people that come forward, the more helpful that is ultimately to the police. But there are fundamental issues of law reform here. Should we change our criminal code? Do we need to change our anti-stalking laws because they don't seem to be adequate right now? Do we need to change our consumer protection laws and our laws for occupational health and safety, given some of the allegations made? They are civil matters. They are things that a Senate inquiry could easily look at without in any way interfering with any criminal investigation.
Right, all very good questions. Brian, what is being done then to deal with the complaints authorities have already received from these ex-members?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kyla, I couldn't hear you.
So, Brian, what is being done then to deal with the complaints that authorities have already received?
That's a great question. The situation is police have been handed complaints by a number of ex-members, but how do you investigate a woman who says she was forced to have an abortion? What evidence can you gather to form a brief for prosecution in a court of law? This is the problem facing police, and as more and more people are coming forward, do the police have the manpower and the money, to the resources to throw at investigating what is alleged to be endemic corruption and abuse? These are questions that Nick Xenophon has asked in the Senate, and reasons he's given for the Senate perhaps being the better place to examine these allegations.
All right. David, let's bring you in here. Were you surprised with the outcome in Parliament?
No, I wasn't surprised. Look, I tend to agree with the Prime Minister here. I think if there are abuses within any religious organisation, then they ought to be examined and they ought to be handed over to the police. I mean, the Catholic Church has been responsible for the most extraordinary level of abuse. People have committed suicide. There's hundreds of people. Now, that wasn't referred to the Senate, but it was referred to the police, and that's the place where it should be. So I think it's good that Nick has raised the issue, but the Senate is not the place to do it.
Well, what do the alleged victims therefore do then? If they don't feel that the police are listening to their inquiries, police haven't got resources, whatever, this has now been blocked in the Senate. Well, what do they do, the victims, the alleged victims?
Well, I understand that a number of them are suing the church, so they have recourse to the courts in that way, and they could well find lawyers who would do that on either pro bono or on an adjusted fees basis. So they do have that, and also the fact that they have raised these issues means that the clear light of public scrutiny is now on the church. And that in itself has the effect. I mean, the fact is the church has started to speak out. I mean, they spoke out last Sunday night and allowed people inside for the first time. That's good. When churches become secret and hide away from public scrutiny, that's when the trouble starts.
All right. Senator, let's finish up with you. You say you're encouraged by the language out of Parliament. The language from Scientology is calling this a witch hunt. All of that considered, what comes next? Where does this go now?
Look, the government has invited me to keep talking to them about this. I'll be having meetings during the parliamentary break. I want a way forward. I want these people to have a voice and a platform and to have some sensible law reform, both in terms of consumer protection, occupational health and safety laws, and our criminal law system doesn't seem to adequately deal with this, particularly when you're looking at stalking by people, by different individuals, but where the allegations are that it's done by an organisation. Our current laws don't cover that, and we need to look at that.
OK, we'll see where this goes in Adelaide. Thank you very much, Nick Xenophon. In Canberra, Brian Seymour. And here on the couch, David Milliken. Thank you, David.
Thanks.